Every Albion streamer gets constantly bombarded with the same noob questions every day when they're streaming. These noob questions get asked so frequently that a lot of streamers just don't even bother answering them anymore. Or maybe they'll just tell you to go look for answers on YouTube. Well, this is YouTube, so let me answer all of your questions right here. All of your noob questions can basically be divided into 4 categories: how to make silver, how to fame farm, what's the best build, and why do you kill me? Let's start with all the silver related questions. How to make silver. If the question is given to me exactly like that, I would usually tell you to just not worry about it, because every type of content in the game will generate some silver for you, and the better you get at it, the more silver you'll make from it. So it's much more important to just focus on getting good at something that you find to be enjoyable. For example, if you like to PvP, you can do the Mist or you can do Hellgates, there's money in that. If you like to do life skill stuff, like there's big money in crafting and refining. And if you like to do PvE stuff, you can do things like selling statics or high level HCEs. But none of these things will make you millions of silvers right away if you don't spend some time speccing things up or getting good at it first. Sometimes you ask this question and people will tell you some stupid things like, just take a bloodlighter and go rat the mist. I've seen so many new players trying to do this in the Mist, and most of them are not successful on their first try. It takes them a while to learn how to do it first. I've seen players watch YouTube guides on like gimmicky market tricks, like buy this item here and sell it there to make a flip a profit. And yes, you can make a lot of silver like that. But if you don't do some market research first, you will sometimes even end up losing money instead of making it. So, in short, just don't look for these shortcut ways to make silver. They don't really help you learn the game, and it's much better to progress in the game the natural way. Find something you enjoy doing, do it a lot, get good at it, and the silver will just come your way. Under the big umbrella of how to make silver, there are also a lot of little related questions. Let's go through some of them. First, we have how to make premium quick. This is kind of the same as asking how to make silver when you're just starting out, but with the scope of a free-to-play player in mind. Even in today's economy, with premium costing well over 20 mil, it is still possible to start a new account and hit premium before the 3 days of free premium run out. There are a lot of content on YouTube that will show you this process, but in general, it's all solo content grinding, like doing the Mist or doing corrupted dungeons, and it's a lot of ratting. This kind of content is called Zero to Hero. Search it up on YouTube, I'm sure you'll find a lot of it. The problem with Zero to Hero guides though is that most new players simply will not be able to actually pull it off. Zero to Hero is usually done by someone who has been playing the game for a long time and knows the game inside out. In the past, when I show people how to do a Zero to Hero, most of the newer players who are actually just starting out cannot pull it off, no matter how easy it actually is. So this kind of circles back to my answer on the first question. Just don't look for shortcuts. Just get good at something first, and the silver will come to you. Now, I know some of you might be interested in playing this game like completely free to play, but the truth is, the game company SBI wants you to spend some money on the game, and trying to go against that is a bit of an uphill battle. It is doable, but for most new players, it's just really hard to pull off, no matter how many guides they watch. But if you want to try it anyways, just search up Zero to Hero on YouTube and you'll see how other people do it. A second related question is what makes you the most silver in this game? There are a small handful of players in this game who have over 1 trillion silver, like maybe 7 or 8 or something like that. And as far as I know, these players are all crafters. High level crafting from a good hideout is probably the biggest silver printer in the game. You can find plenty of guides on how to do this on YouTube as well, so I won't go too in depth here, but none of the big PvP streamers that you watch make anything close to what a top crafter can make in this game. That said, crafting is not just free easy money either, as most of the profitable forms of crafting requires you to be in a decent guild with a good hideout, and you need to have good specs in it. So it's definitely still a long game, not something that will get you rich instantly. Refining is probably a bit easier to get into than crafting. and also makes you a lot of silver, but it's very time consuming. And for guides on refining, you can look up Double Back Envy on YouTube, or I'll put a link in the video descriptions. Next question is gathering worth it? The short answer to this is no. Gathering is worth it only as a side activity or if you just really enjoy the process of gathering, which a lot of people do. But if you're doing it purely for silver, you won't really make a whole lot of silver in the early levels, and it takes a while to level up your gathering to the point where it is profitable. And when I say profitable, a TA solo gatherer with no guild, no hideout makes about 2 mil or so in an hour, give or take. It's definitely not the most lucrative thing in the game, but it can be fun to just grind and chill. And if you enjoy that kind of gameplay, then yeah, definitely go ahead and level up your gathering. Or if you enjoy roaming around in the open world or in the mist, and you just want to pick up the rare mats that you see as you look for other forms of content, then that would be a really good reason to level up your gathering too. But if you're doing it purely for money, there are better things that you can do for money. And then related to gathering, which gathering profession is the best? Well, the market is constantly changing, so what's best now might not be the best in the future. But currently, leather and fishing are the two best professions in terms of silver per hour. Can you make all of your silver from PvP? I would say 90% of my income is PvP, but also I'm a streamer, so people give me donations all the time, and that helps too. But yes, you can easily sustain yourself in this game by doing only PvP. If PvP is the only thing that interests you, you don't need to work a day job to support your hobbies in this game. Let's move on now to how to fame farm. Fame farming is much easier now than when I started. You can spec up pretty quickly just running around the open world and killing open world mobs. If you have a guild, doing group content such as Ava dungeons is still probably better, but if you're alone, open world mobs, solo road, and mist mobs are all good ways to fame farm. Personally, I did 99% of my fame farming on this account in the mists. I made this account right before the Mist launch and pretty much only did the Mist with it. So to new players, I recommend fame farming in either the Mist or corrupted dungeons, even though these are maybe not the most efficient ways to fame farm. But to a lot of these new players, their goal is to be able to PvP in either the Mist or the corrupted dungeons. So I tell them to just go play the kind of content that they want to play, even if the fame is a little bit slower. This way they don't get burned out on just mindlessly grinding. And also they can dip their feet in PvP a little earlier. They can make a little silver from ratting, and they can actually learn how the Mist and how the corrupted dungeon actually works. But if you really want to just focus on efficiency, I would say group content like Ava dungeons come first, and if you're alone, then soloing Ava roles will be the best. If you find a good zone, the upgraded Avalonian mobs are like 400k fame per mob, and even in the lower tier zones, the humanoid Avalonian mobs are still really worth killing. The roads are also less ganked than the open world, and spending less time running from gankers means more time farming. However, Avalonian mobs can be a bit harder to kill if you're running a PvP build, so this leads to the next question, which is what's a good build for fame farming? If you're farming on the roads, you might need a build that's actually good at killing mobs, because Ava road mobs can be pretty difficult to kill, especially when you find them in camps, and especially when you don't have a whole lot of specs. You want to pick a weapon that gives you some sustain, such as the one-hand axe, dagger, shadow collar, and of course the druidic staff. You can also bring a friend to heal you. It's pretty common to see duos doing the roles together as a healer and a DPS. And if you are doing this, if you're running a healer DPS duo, then your build can be pretty flexible. Any kind of healer, any kind of DPS. But if you're doing the roads alone, then you'll want a weapon that gives you sustain. You'll want a specialized PvE build, right? And what this means though is that it might not be ideal for you to use your PvP build to fame farm. So this will be better if you're running a PvE build and you're just fame farming through auto respec. If you intend to use your PvP build to fame farm, then it might be better to stick to the open world and the mist, as the mobs there will be easier to kill on these less specialized builds. The biggest solo rogues weapons are the ones I mentioned, the one-hand axe, dagger, nature staff, and shadow caller. There are different ways to build these weapons, but personally, I say you can't go wrong with running a Spectre Hood, Mercenary Jacket, Moisek, and Energy Sprint for the one-hand axe, Nature, and Shadow Caller, and Assassin Hood, Hunter Jacket, Torch, and Energy Sprint for the one-hand dagger. These are perhaps not the fastest clearing builds, but they are very forgiving, right? So if you take some mob damage, you heal back up. And for low spec players, I think this is probably the best way to do it because you can go down to mobs this way. And now this brings us to the next question, which is which one is better? Fame farming through fame credits like auto respec, or just farming with a weapon that you intend to PvP on? So the short answer to this is generally auto respec is better since you're using a efficient PvE build at max spec to clear mobs instead of a low spec PvP weapon that may or may not be so good at PvE, right? So using a PvE build also lets you farm certain areas that would otherwise just be too difficult, right? So the Avalonian Roads would be an example for this. So overall, it is more efficient to use a PvE build and auto respec. But of course, auto respec costs silver, and you may or may not have silver, right? So if you don't have the silver for auto respec, then it will be pretty much your only choice to take your normal PvP build and just go kill open world or miss mobs with it. Let's move on now to the next topic. What's the best weapon for PvP? This is probably the most hated questions that get asked. It's a impossible question to answer. There are many different forms of PvP, and almost every single weapon fits a niche somewhere or is meta somewhere. And a weapon that is good in one form of content may not be good in a similar form of content. For example, regular bows are very good at corrupted dungeons, but in the mist, they are useless. And even though Myths and Corrupted Dungeons are both solo content, the gameplay is very different. In Corrupted Dungeons, there are no mounts, and well, for the most part, there are no people running undead capes. And both of those things make the regular bow useless for the Myths, since the regular bow is pretty bad at dismounting, and it can't kill people through undead capes. So the only honest answer to this question is just play the game yourself and find the weapon that you like the most. As far as the mist goes, there's a weapon from pretty much every non-healer trait right now that is either in meta or used fairly frequently, or it's maybe like a little bit off meta but totally viable. So if I tell you to play a weapon just because I like that weapon, but you try it and you just hate it, then I just screwed you, right? Because now you just wasted a bunch of time fame farming for a weapon that you don't like. And once you find out you don't like it, now you have to find a different weapon to fame farm. And that's just going to cost you a lot of time. There's also just not a single weapon that is objectively way better than everything else in terms of PvP. Every meta weapon in the mist is more or less on the same level. I know this can be very daunting for new players as they just don't know where to start. So often I would recommend people who ask this question to start with a battle axe. When it comes to solo PvP content, I'd say battle axe is a pretty good place to start because it is good for both PvP and PvE. It is cheap, it is capable of fighting people that are above your item level, and people use it both for the myth and for corrupted dungeons. So I tell people to start with the battle axe, and if they don't like it, then they can always keep it as a PvE weapon for fame farming fame credits. If you already know that you don't want to play the battle axe and you want some recommendations on other weapons to play, check out my other videos. I have guides on other weapons, and make sure you sub to this channel so you'll see my future guides. A related question under this category is what's meta? And again, as far as the myths are concerned, there are weapons from pretty much every weapon tree that is being played, and many off-meta options are also viable. If I had to pick one representative from every weapon tree, it would be as follows. Carving sword, one-hand axe, one-hand mace, great hammer, light crossbow, fist of Avalon, one-hand spear, death givers, bow of Badon, wildfire staff, one-hand curse, double-bladed staff, chill house, and one-hand arcane. If I have to pick a top 5, I would say double-bladed staff, carving sword, great hammer, chill house, and death givers. This is mostly based on popularity, not on how strong these weapons actually are, as I think most of these weapons are on similar levels, with the less mobile choices like fire or curse being a bit subpar. So if you're looking for ideas on what to play, those are the weapons that I think you should be choosing from. In other forms of content, the meta can be very different, but since I am mostly a Myth player, I can't speak too much about other content. Lastly, we have the category of why you kill me. This is a question that a lot of new players ask after they die to an A3 or A4 player in the Mist, and it's a really stupid question. It's a full loop PvP game, no one really needs a reason to kill you, but we do have plenty of reasons to do it. Even if you don't have any loot on you, it is simply more beneficial to the A3 players to kill you rather than to leave you alone. And trust me, there's not a single A3 player that goes in the mist in their A3 gear just to kill flat 4 fame farmers. For an A3 player, their primary goal is to kill other players who are also worth killing. Even the A3 double blade staffs that runs away from every other A3 fight would much rather spend his time looking for flat 8 or 8-1 players to kill instead of running over some flat 4 fame farmer. But if they catch you slipping, they will still kill you, because your presence alone can cause issues for them. If they let you live, you can rat them when they get into a fight. Even if you don't try to rat, a lot of the times a new player will stay mounted to watch 2 A3 players fight each other because they think it's cool. Right, because they've not seen A3 people fight before or something. But to the A3 players, this kind of audience is incredibly stressful because they don't know if you're going to rat them or not. And if you don't rat them, you can still end up killing them indirectly by blocking a skill shot, by giving his enemy a target to dash to with something like Shadow Edge, or by giving Q stacks to his enemy, or by giving mercenary jacket procs to his enemy, and etc. No one wants your presence when a real fight happens. Like, no one wants your interference when they're fighting someone for real. So they have to kill you before the real fight happens. Especially nowadays, with more and more players catching on to the gear swapping thing, sometimes you see a guy on a 4-1 fame farming build, you ignore him, you go fight somebody else, and the 4-1 changes his gear into a full rat build and comes ratting. If you don't know what I'm talking about, search up Goldstein on YouTube and you'll know. But in short, leaving you to live offers them no advantage and only opens them up to more risks. So that's why A3 players do not and should not let you go just because you look like you have low gear. That said, how do you avoid these A3 players? Well, that would be the next question. There are 2 useful tips for not getting caught by an A3 player. First is to set up a hotkey for recording mode. Go into your game settings, click on the hotkeys tab, scroll down to the interface section. There's an option there called recording mode. Recording mode turns off your general UI while keeping the name tags and health bars visible. This makes it easier for you to see people coming at you so you won't be surprised by them. Keep your mount near you and mount up every time you see a name tag. Don't wait and inspect them first. Just mount up as soon as you see them, and then inspect them later to see if you need to run or not. Second, if you are in the mist to fame farm, run a Guardian Helmet. Guardian Helmet removes dots and provides a shield which prevents damage. When you have mobs on you, it can be hard to mount up because if you take damage, your mounting will be interrupted. Guardian Helmet prevents damage and makes sure that you can mount, so you won't be caught because you can't mount up. Never go into screen range to inspect someone. We have off-screen name tags now, so you don't need to wait until somebody's right in front of you to click on them and then inspect them. I would say 90% of the times when low gear players die to me in the mist, it's because they got too close. There's no reason for them to be that close. If you want to inspect, stay off screen, press that recording mode hotkey, and then inspect them from off screen. If you play that way, then there should be no way for anybody to ever catch you. I have another video where I roleplayed as a new player for a full 9-hour day, and I did not die a single time during that whole time. I will put the video link in the descriptions below, and you'll see that it's really not hard at all to avoid people in the mist. If your goal is to not PvP and just to fame farm, then it's really not hard at all to not die. Of course, this also applies to the open world, since we talked a bit about fame farming in the open world. When you're fame farming in the open world, just always assume that every name tag you see is a ganker. Mount up as soon as you see one, and then move to either a different area of the map to keep farming, or just move to the closest exit and wait for the gankers to pass. If you spend some time in the open world and learn to dodge and juke gank squads, and then you come back into the mist, you'll realize that surviving A3 players in the mist is child's play compared to what you have to face in the open world. Alright, so that is a full list of every noob question that I get asked the most. So if there's any questions that I missed, feel free to ask in the comments. And if I get enough missed questions, I'll make another video. Like this video, sub to the channel, follow me on Twitch, and I will see you in the next one.